everybody. Welcome to Dwelling of Duels. How do I read lead sheets edition? Thanks everybody for joining tonight in the chat. I'm here joined by wonderful duelist friends of mine, JohnStacy and Angry Polar Bear, aka Chris Doty. How y'all doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah, doing just fine.
John's gonna be like, no, terrible. Don't ask me that. Yeah. So, yeah, this panel idea was shout out to Valence for suggesting this about just asking, hey, how do I read a lead sheet? Because of course, this month on Dwelling of Duels is all about we're doing a collaboration with VGLeadSheets.com, of which JohnStacy, you are a contributor for a lot of sheets on this site. So, props to him for that. But yeah, a lot of people in the DoD community and DoD world and stuff like that don't know exactly how to use a lead sheet, because most of people, myself included, are used to doing like MIDI, following along that way, transcribing by ear. I know personally I'm not classically trained in any way. I can read sheet music, but it's the kind of thing where I have to go through it and notate, all the notes and things. I can't sight read anything. So, yeah, but tonight we're just going to we're going to do a little bit of a short primer about how to read sheet music, just for those who need the refresher. We're going to do a little bit about, how to read notes and things like that. And then we're going to talk about how to use a lead sheet, how they can help you with your arrangements. What do you do with a lead sheet? Etc., all those kind of things. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, so you want me to just begin with what the dots and the squiggles mean?
Sure, yeah. Give us a refresher course for our elementary school music.
Oh, I was going to say before we get going, if people in the chat, I'll keep an eye on the chat. If people do have specific questions, stick them in there and we'll do our best to answer them at an appropriate time, or tell you that the answer is coming later.
Yes, you can tag either at Dwelling of Duels, at Angry Polar Bear. I don't know, John, are you in the chat? Are you?
Yeah,
you can tag
I'm not
us.
saying it. I'm reading it, but I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not answering it. But
yeah, go ahead and tag any of us, and we'll see the questions as they come up.
Okay, so a thing about reading sheet music that a lot of people who have never done it, they seem to be scared of it because it's like this really complicated thing. It's basically the things that you already do, just put in a different way. So, for example, on the staff here, it's going to be a low note and then it gets higher. So basically, as the notes get higher up on the page, they get higher in pitch. Normally, the way that people are taught is basically you have a mnemonic to remember the lines and the spaces. So you have an E, G, B, D, F, and you can have a lot of ways to do that. Every good boy does fine. Back whenever I was in sixth grade, the thing I was taught was even George Bush drives fast, whatever. And then the spaces they're just a face, F-A-C-E. But a thing that I found that can be more helpful for people is giving some guide notes. And so the one that I choose to use is, if you've ever played Cards Against Humanity, you have probably gotten the card that says B's. And these are all B's, basically the middle line, and then one space or two spaces above and two spaces below. Those are all going to be B's. And so how you use this is basically, let's say you have a note that's right there. Well, just start counting up in letter names, B, B, C, D, E. And so this is going to be an E. And that's basically how you read pitches. And so you find some notes that and then you just count up or down to them. And then you just follow the contour. So, I'm a session musician for a living, so I sight read, all the time. A lot of the time, whenever I'm having to read something like this, I'm not actually thinking C, D, E, F, B, E, C, whatever. I'm actually just thinking, okay, it starts on C, it goes up, and then jumps, and then it just kind of does this squiggly thing down. That's actually how I'm thinking of it. So if you think of it that way, it'll help a lot. And that's pretty much all you need to do for pitches. For bass clef, it's the exact same idea, except instead of B's, now you have D's, which I don't know, you can help me out there. Make a joke on your own. Okay, now we all laugh. Okay, we're good. And that's the end. That's the end of my rhythms. So the basic thing to learn is that the more stuff that's attached to the note, the faster it goes. This takes up a whole measure, 4 beats. If you add a thing to it, it takes up half as long. If you add another thing to it, in this case, filling in, then it takes half as long as that. So basically you have, this is 4 beats, this is 2, this is 2, this is 1 beat each. And then you add another thing to it, and it becomes half of that. So that's half a beat. That adds up to 1 beat. And then you add another thing to it, and that's a quarter of a beat. And pretty much always, if it's beamed together like this, it's going to add up to a beat, pretty much always. And that's the crash course on rhythm there. So subdivisions. Yeah. So to give a little practical example, that's D, that's an E, that's an F, that's a G, that's an E, that's a C, and that's a D. So the way that this would work, these all get half a beat, this gets a beat, and this is a whole note, so it gets 4 beats. It starts on D, D, E, F, G, E, C. So now we have this. Yeah, da, da. 1, 2, 3, 4, off. There we go. And well, now you can, So the idea here is that basically just goes up, and then you can see it skips, and then it goes down and goes back up. So if you're following along with the tune, one of the things about VG lead sheets is that the point of VG lead sheets is that these are not arrangements. These are transcriptions as note for note as possible from the original. So you don't need to be able to sight read this super effectively. Basically, you just listen to the original and follow along, and you can kind of get an idea of how it goes. So yeah, there's your crash course into basic notation things. Well, what now we could do.
I quite like Tetris Type A as
Oh,
an easy
yeah.
one to read, because everybody knows the tune, and it's pretty straightforward to follow.
Oh, the chords? Oh.
Apparently you're mute, Austin. Apparently you're on mute.
Oh no, I've been talking so much. Okay, what was I saying? Yeah, so okay,
the
right, we're going to talk
transpositions.
about the transposing instruments and stuff. Sorry, I had to mute my mechanical keyboard because it's too loud. At the top on VG lead sheets, there's a section that says like C, B flat, E flat, F, alto, bass, all those things. Basically, if you play an instrument and you know if you play an instrument that transposes, you already know this fact. Like, I don't think there's any way you could play a transposing instrument and not know that your instrument transposes. If you've never heard of a transposing instrument, that means you play a C instrument. Okay, so guitar is C. I don't know what else is C. Piano, I guess.
Piano, oboe,
Flute, all strings, and then the bass one, the one that says bass, is also in C. It's just written in bass clef, and so this is written for people that read the bass clef, trombone, cello, etc. So if you play bass and you're just looking for the chords, you can just read the C one. And a lot of bass players I know actually read in treble clef for melodies and stuff, just because they, the ones that aren't active reading types, like they'll just have treble because it's easier.
Is the saxophone transposed? There's a question about that.
Yes, saxophone is transposed. It depends on the saxophone. Alto and baritone are an E flat. So you pick the E flat one. Tenor and soprano are in B flat. Trumpet is in B flat. French horn is an F, which is the key that rules the world. I mean, the alto is for alto clef, and that's basically the viola, and alto trombone, if you're one of those. And then some of these have lyrics. So only the ones that have lyrics will be a vocal one, like Jump Up Superstar. It will have the sheet, and it'll also have the lyrics written under it. And it's probably really super small, but Chrome does not like me zooming in on a site, so...
Yeah, and the question in the chat there, that's the letter in the top left corner. So yeah, if you're looking at a particular sheet, so for Tetris type A, Korobeniki, it's got C up in the top left, I think, with what you're showing right now on the stream, Austin. Yeah. But yeah, if you clicked on the other ones, it would show if this was the score for a B flat instrument or an E flat instrument or whatever. So definitely, if you're playing a whole bunch of people in a band and you've like literally printed these out, you would know to have enough of each type for the different instruments to make sure that everybody's got the appropriate one. And when you actually play what you're reading, it will sound appropriate together.
Right.
We hope it'll sound appropriate.
We hope.
So, so I think I'm thinking about right now is that in my crash course, I probably left some things out that are lead sheet specific. So I should probably talk about those a little bit.
We're here to talk about.
Okay. So is there any way you can zoom in on my sheet real quick? Basically just in the area here? Because that would make things easier. Because it's kind of tiny, because my screen is 55 inches. So
it's also like the OBS thing it's very low quality. So I have my version of it up that's extremely crisp to read, but I can't see your mouse on it. You can see my mouse on it, but
okay.
I guess I could mirror what you're doing. Let me see.
Oh, yeah. You could also do that. Okay. It looks... All right. So basically, the things that are going to be consistent in all lead sheets, the title is going to be at the top. The game it's from is going to be right below it. And the composer information is going to be in the right, including who transcribed it. Those are going to be pretty consistent on VG lead sheets because they have a remarkably consistent formatting system that will pretty much never deviate. If you go to the left, like right above the first staff there, you'll see it'll tell you the tempo. So in this case, quarter note equals 150. So that's 150 beats per minute. And then if you go right below that, you'll see a square with a letter in it. That's called a rehearsal mark. And what that is for is that if you're rehearsing this tune, you're jamming this tune, basically you can say, hey, can we take it from B? Or if you're performing this and it's like, all right, we're gonna perform this. We're gonna go A, B, A, and then we're gonna do our solos and we're gonna play A, B, A again, and then go out. What that means, play A, and then you're gonna do the A, play A again, so go back to the A up here. So you play that twice, and then you go down to B over here, and then you start there, play B, and then you go back to A again and play that once. So that's A, B, A. And then you'll do your solos. And then, so that's what those are for. Those are called rehearsal marks. If you go below that, this is called time signature, which is a fairly basic thing. A lot of things are going to be in either 4/4 or 3/4. What that means is that the top number tells you how many beats there are in a bar. So in this case, 4, there are 4 beats in a bar. The bottom one over 4 is a fraction. That's a quarter. So there are 4 quarter notes per bar. And then next to the A, you have your chord symbols. And in reality, a lot of people who I know that use lead sheets, they won't actually read the melody. They won't actually read the notes, but they will read the chords. And so here you have an E with a 7 next to it. And so what that is, just start at E and then go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. and that's an E7. That's your first chord of the piece. And then you have an, yes?
When you're counting those sevens, are you counting semitones, or what are you counting there?
So basically you count in the scale tones from the start. And so in the key of E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, and then D. It'd be D natural because it's a 7, basically just means it's a lowered 7. Because normally it'd be D sharp, but so that's the basic idea. And there's an E7. And then the next one, A dash, that's basically A minor. And then, yeah, a lot of this stuff will be very familiar to people who play guitar or keyboard.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just about reading, like understanding the way it's notated for the lead sheet. And like I know coming from when I was learning to read chord symbols, actually, we didn't use the minor sign. We used a lowercase m for a minor, and an uppercase M meant major if you needed to specify it. But if there was no uppercase, if there was not an M at all, then it was sort of by default major. But the good thing about these is that it's really easy to look it up online. If you want to look up like what is an A minus chord, you'll easily find lots of guides.
I just posted a really good Wikipedia article called "Chord Names and Symbols (parentheses Popular Music). That page is very handy for finding what the heck do these dang symbols mean.
Right. So beyond that, there's not that many unusual things. If you see a slash, like in the third measure there, you see an E7 / G sharp. All that means is you have an E7 chord, and then you take your G sharp and put it in the bass. And that's all that really means.
Oh yeah, there's a question about does plus mean major and minus equals minor? Plus isn't always major, right?
Plus never means major.
Okay. Well,
anytime that there's going to be a plus, it's almost always going to be augmented. And so if you see like D plus, then that's going to be a D augmented. Yeah, once the screen is there.
I gotcha. Yeah, you're there.
All right. So if you see a D plus, that means basically would be a D augmented. And then sometimes this is kind of obsolete, but I'll know sometimes it'll be something like a D7. And then, where's my plus on my keyboard? Plus 13, which in the parentheses basically means add the 13, but that's kind of obsolete and it's very unclear. So plus just almost always means augmented. Generally, if you wanted to use add, they just actually write out add now. So yeah, that's pretty much major 7 question in the chat there. So major 7 on VG lead sheets, the typical way is that you would have a triangle, and so it'd be D triangle. So Sibelius actually changes it to MAJ7 because that's my default, but it would be a
it's like a delta symbol, right?
Yeah. I don't have it handy, but it would basically just be a triangle. Yeah, so I think that should be all the common chord types that we're going to run into.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, to the sheet.
Did you mention what it means when there's like a something over something else? Like this E7?
Yeah, slash chord?
Yeah.
I did mention that, but in the case it was...
then that's fine.
In the case it was lost, for the viewers at home just tuning in, basically if it's like an E7 over G sharp, what that means, you take an E7 and you put the G sharp in the bass down there. And it goes on. All right, neat. So if you want to follow along with me, basically I'm going to play through the chords of this first little bit of the sheet here. So first chord's an E7 right there. And we hold it for a whole measure, 4 beats. So it's going to go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's the first 8 measures of chords.
Beautiful. There's there's a lot of symbols for lead sheets and things like that, and they can certainly be complicated to people in the chat who saying it like you're saying it's more complicated than it should be. I mean, you come up with a better system, and then
I mean, I know, and I think like one of the key things about Leech is it's like it's your roadmap for your piece. It's like boiling the piece down into the essential things that you need to play something that resembles this bit of music. It's not obviously showing you every little nuance of harmony and whatnot that you've got in there. You need full on sheet music for that, but it's meant to be a guide and giving you the essential pieces. And in this case, the essential pieces are usually what's the melody and what's the chords that go along with that melody, which is tells you something about the harmony. But the cool thing is as well is that the chords usually generally tell you the bass line as well. So if I look at this from a different perspective, rather than playing the chords to like John was just doing, if I just ignore everything in those chord symbols except the letter, that's basically my really simple bass line. So I've got and that was just me playing the melody with my right hand, and then the left I just went E, A, G sharp, E, A, D, C, E, A. And obviously it loses a lot of like the character of the tune because there wasn't even any major or minor or anything in there, but it's recognizable as the tune, right? And then each of those additional things that gets added to those chord symbols, whether it's telling you that it's major or minor, telling you that it's a seventh, telling you that there's a different bass note, telling you that it's diminished, or you add a flat ninth or whatever on top of it, all of that is like the color that gives the piece its character.
Yeah, so it's totally allowed to John, you're cracking me up.
Sorry,
don't be mean to our viewers. Yeah, the stuff about the chords, like if you don't know what a specific chord symbol is, it's always you can just play that root note and it'll be fine, or make up your own chord underneath of it or something like that to go with it.
Right. And that's honestly how I do a lot of my arrangements. Whenever I'll do my, anybody that has heard stuff I write know that harmonically I do some really complicated things and have a lot of just really, a million chords a minute kind of a thing. Usually what I'll do for these is I'll have the melody there, and it'll just be like starting at B in this chart. That's simple, but a thing I'm thinking is, okay, I know that an E, I can make that the major 7 of an F chord, so that sounds very Castlevania-esque, or it's like E, C. Well, I could do that as a C sharp minor. And that's very dissonant, it's very Lord of the Rings. And it's just the idea that, okay, I'm using this as a starting point, because if I played it exactly as it was written, I'd be recreating the original tune. And why would I do that? So and that's
only
basically
Pingo
the
Simon
idea.
can make the straight covers.
Well, yeah, so there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just kind of a thing that you don't have to, and that's kind of another thing about sheet music that a lot of people think is that it's basically just, you have to do it exactly like this. If you're working in classical music, yeah, you have to play it note for note. You're not allowed to deviate, and even I think that's kind of stupid as, a classical musician. But, in jazz or anything, the sheet music is just kind of a reference, So if somebody said, hey, we're going to jam on this tune, if they gave me a lead sheet, well, I could make it happen because I know how to read it. I don't have to sit and learn it and basically listen to it, learn it, listen to it, learn it. I can basically just be like, okay, Tetris, type A, 1, 2, 3, 4. Something like that. And it'll just be like, I'm just pulling that off the spot just because I'm reading the chords,
Right. Yeah, you don't have to have rehearsed anything before. It's made for jams, and then you jam on that thing exactly the same way you said. Do A, B, A, do some solos, close it up.
Yeah, I always used to find when, especially when I was in school and people realized I could play piano and they'd be like, oh, hey, I want to, sing this tune in a show. Can you play it for me? And maybe they'd have, like good example would be like musical theater stuff where they got, a book of here's tunes from Les Miserables or whatever. And maybe I don't have enough time to actually learn the actual piano part for this piece. But what they would usually do is have chord symbols above the tune. So as long as I was kind of a little bit familiar with it, I would basically fake my way through sight reading it by just using the chord symbols, which was enough to do what they wanted me to do, which is have something to sing along with, rather than, later, sure, if I wanted to play it absolutely perfect recreation, I could go and actually learn the parts as written. But the idea of a lead sheet is to make it and using the chord symbols is to make it as simple enough that you can sight read it way easier than you can sight read the actual music, which lets you quickly pick things up, play around with them, play with a whole bunch of people when not everybody's familiar with the music, etc.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is a question from the chat about I'm just going to answer this real quick. The Mu major chord. This is specifically a Steely Dan thing. Like it's not really relevant outside of that. And basically what it is it's a root, a fifth, a ninth, and a third. And various voicings of that. But it's called an add two chord anywhere else. And that's the Mu major. Okay, I'm done.
Mu major. Okay. Do we want to take a look at another sheet? Maybe one for something like... I have a list of the ones we looked at yesterday. Do we want to look at maybe Dire Docs, Super Mario 64?
Sure, I think that's a good one because it's pretty easy to follow as well. And I like that one because it actually it doesn't just show you the melody, it shows you another part as well, because for the intro, like there's the very
iconic bass line,
recognizable. So in the case of this lead sheet, it's saying like, hey, you know what? There's no melody going on this part. Let's just show you this other part as well because it's important to the tune. But you can see those use tiny notes instead of the big normal sized ones because it's kind of showing you that it's an extra part or it's a harmony or it's an accompaniment.
And in this case, so actually I was scared to do the sheet for the longest time because I didn't know how I could communicate it in a way that was good. And the way that they did it here, I think is the ideal because, yes, it shows that part, but I think, thinking purely by what's necessary is that the piano voicings, that piano arpeggio pattern, is so iconic to this thing. Like it's just so you cannot have Dire Dogs without that. People will literally riot, if you don't. So that's the main reason.
Yeah, and then you can see it's got a line on there when you do get down to where the melody comes in, which is that letter A there, where you see the. And then underneath, you just stick the little shortcut saying rhythm simile, which basically means keep doing the same rhythm you've been doing for the other part, for the accompaniment, because it's basically following the same pattern. So again, it's just like a shortcut or shorthand to say accompaniment, keep doing what you're doing. Meanwhile, here's the melody. And obviously keeping on with the chords as you go through.
Valence was asking in the chat, can we break down the melody like we did the rhythm? Do we want to do something about the like for this first line, since it's such a very iconic line, that do 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 do.
Yeah, we can do that. And so I'm guessing it's kind of just how the rhythm and the pitches work together to make this happen. I guess that's kind of what
yeah, maybe Valence, can you elaborate a little bit on what you would like us to do? Because I think we can certainly do it. I'm just not sure what the best way to what do all the lines and squigglies mean?
Okay, so this is probably just a thing in practice that we could do, how to make these in practice. So if you remember at the beginning, or if you're just joining us now, I talked about the idea of guide tones. And the middle line of the treble staff is a B. And then these lines are E, G, B, D, F, and the spaces are F, A, C, E. And if you don't know a note right off, you can count down to it. So if you know that the bottom line is an E, well, you go down one letter name and there's a D. So the first note of the melody is a D. And then you go to the next note, and the lines are E, G.
Yeah.
So you know now that it's a G. So, and then the next several notes are all basically they're the next thing up. So you have a line, you go right up to the next space. That means that it's going to be basically the note names. It's going to be like a scale. English is hard. Okay, so starting on the G there on the second note, G, then you have an A, next note name up, and then you have a B, next note name up, then I have a C, next note name up, and then you go back down. B, A, G. And then the next note in that measure was just like the first one of this measure. We figured out that that was a D, so that's a D. Then you go to the next note name down, which is a C. And then we figured out that this was a G, and we figured out that this was a D. Right? So there's the pitches. The rhythms from the beginning, basically, there's 4 beats in a bar, 4, 4, as it says at the very, very beginning. So there's going to be 4 quarter notes in a bar. And so we see we have 4 quarter notes here. So these will each get 1 beat. This will get 4 beats because it takes up a whole measure. And these are half a beat each. So half a beat rest. So if we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, da 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 da. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's how these work together. And if you want to sight read, yeah, you have to get a lot faster than that. But just for figuring out the notes, I mean, you can kind of just piece through it.
Yeah, they're connected in order to signify that all of these notes in this block are the same duration. Right?
More or less.
Yeah.
They're grouped together. Because eighth notes are kind of weird. They're the ones that are grouped together in 4, and so it kind of breaks their beam together, so it's a beat rule. But so just learn that as eighth notes, you know.
Yeah. And yeah, this mark here at the very beginning, this is a eighth note rest. So like John said, that very first beat of the measure, that eighth note is nothing. And if you listen to Dar Dar Docs and you go along with it the way that you know the song to be is, you know, it doesn't start on the beat. It starts like there's a short little pickup after the beat. Bum, 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 bum. My rhythm is terrible right now, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll add on the rest. So each of the note durations has an equivalent rest that looks a bit different. And this is one of the things where just like doing some symbol recognition, you get to read these things very quickly. But you can see, right above where it says that rhythm simile on the left there, that's an eighth note rest. And if you go 2 staffs down, so right at rehearsal letter B, which you can see in the box there, the first thing in that measure is actually a quarter note rest. So that's kind of like it's like a really squiggly 3 almost. And then further over to the right, you'll see a few things that just look like a black rectangle sitting on the middle line. That one is a half note rest. But again, with those, it's like if you learn your note lengths and you learn the equivalent rests as well, and then really like find a tune that you know, look at the lead sheet and see if you can follow and figure out, okay, yeah, this is a rest. This is where this comes in if I'm counting my way through the tune as I listen to it.
I've also found that if you use some kind of notation software, like if you are familiar with Finale, Sibelius, Muse Score, or anything like that, or even I've also learned, this is specifically going to Valence, Guitar Pro and all of the free versions of Guitar Pro, if they put stuff in a staff notation, you can also your note durations will be something in there as well. And so I have been able to pick up a lot of the stuff about note durations just from writing things in Guitar Pro recently and learning how to do that.
So, you know, this is kind of building on that. You know, it may seem, if you're not familiar with, it may seem like there's a lot of stuff. But the thing about notation is that if done right and done by somebody who actually knows what they're doing, it is extremely consistent no matter what you're doing with it. And so if we were to go to some kind of really, really, really crazy sheet, you know, my default thing for that is Clockwork from Castlevania 3. If you were to go to something crazy like that, then basically it looks like it's just a black page. It looks like there's a bunch of stuff, but a lot of the stuff that we've looked at is also here, and there's just a little bit more. Like you look at, there's a whole note at the start of the second line. You look at, there's quarter notes, there's half notes everywhere. And then most of the rest of the stuff in here is 16th notes, which all 16th notes are. If you look at the very first measure here, all you did was you took eighth notes and you added another bar to it. So these are each a quarter of a beat long each. And so if you were to listen to it, that is something that there is nothing else that those could mean in music notation. It's like those will always mean that. And it's 4/4, same time, so you already know that. And then we have one bar of 7/8 on the second line. Remember, the top note tells you how many beats there are per measure, and the bottom note tells you what note gets the beat. And so 7/8, there are 7/8 notes. So instead of going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And so that's a little bit complicated, but it'll pretty much, there will be no times whenever it's like, okay, it's 4/4, but there's 9 quarter notes in this bar for no reason. That just doesn't happen. So, okay, stuff in the chat. Yeah,
that's what fermatas. Yeah, and a fermata, it's like what's a good example? Like it's basically you take a little break from the regular rhythm of the piece. So it'll often happen at either like a special moment that you want to have a little bit of extra time, or it'll happen like if you think about or I think the good example is like singing hymns in church or something like that. Usually you hang on to that last note of the verse or of each time through a little bit longer before the next one starts, and then everybody's all out of time. But basically it's especially if you're playing in a group setting, that's where you really need somebody to be the one to be like the authority on when you're going to start up again to be like the leader or indicate when you go back to counting.
And so you'll have this, conductor of the group, and basically it'll be something that'll be like, bump, bump, duh, and they'll just kind of let it hold as long as they want to, and then cut it off, I love doing that. I love doing get the...
Ooh, that's a big finger right in that camera there.
Because the audience loves it. Like for whatever reason, they just think it's like, hey, one of those crazy European conductor guys is here.
It's a big power move.
But
actually, a good analogy as well is like if you imagine if you're imagine the cast in a sitcom that has a laugh track, but the audience isn't actually there. So they say the joke, and then instead of like continuing with, they say the line, and instead of continuing in a normal rhythm of speaking, they take this a little bit of extra time because you got to allow time for the audience to chuckle, and then you carry on speaking, which is why you get those funny videos where they've like taken the laugh track out of Big Bang Theory or whatever, and it sounds awful.
And everyone's just staring at each other between sentences. I love it.
Exactly.
And it's awkward.
Just breaking up the rhythm.
Yeah.
So I think that covers most things, and it's like pretty much whenever it comes to a lead sheet, there are some things that you're going to run into. I'm trying to find an example of one where it kind of has an unusual form, which conveniently they have on VG lead sheets. They have a set of filters, so you can basically filter it by what has a difficult form. And so,
where did you find that?
So it's right next to search.
It's the filter thing. Ooh, form difficult.
So you can filter by things. So if I filter and go to like Last Surprise from Persona 5, that one has a rating of 4 on the form difficulty. And the reason for this is because essentially there are multiple repeats. If you look at the very start of this, if you look at the very, very start of the chart, you'll see that you'll have the double bar line with some dots right next to it. That's a start repeat. That means later on, there's going to be a mirrored version of that. in this case at the end of the second line, and you're going to go back to the beginning. And so these will always happen in pairs. And so this one has a difficult form because you're going to play the first 2 lines, and then you're going to repeat and play the first 2 lines again. And then you're going to go to A, and you're just going to read down line 3, line 4, line 5, line 6. And then if you look at rehearsal B, we have another repeat. And so you're going to play, starting at B, these 4 bars, repeat to B, play these 4 bars again, and then go to the next line, play these 4 bars, repeat, play these 4 bars again, and you see this thing at the very bottom there that says DS all coda. What that means, that's basically the sign, the signo. It's the sign, so you're going to go back to A at the squiggle right here, and you're going to go back to A, and you're just going to read the chart down. Line 3, line 4, line 5, line 6, and then you see at the end of line 6 it says to coda. If you go to the second page, you can see why this one's so complicated. If you go down to the second page, you'll see this little circle with the cross through it. That's called the coda. So now you're going to start here, and you're going to play. And if you notice, you have the first line on this page, and then the second line, and you have a repeat. So you repeat back to the start of the coda here, play 4 measures, 1 line, and then you play this line. And then once you get past the repeats, you get to the end. And so you go to the end at that point. So this is formally very difficult. This would be something that you'd probably have to sit down and work out during a jam. Because, yeah, if somebody doesn't follow a repeat, or somebody doesn't follow a signo, or somebody doesn't go to the coda, it can be an absolute train wreck. And there was one time in a jam where this actually happened, and we basically had one person went to one repeat, and it was on an E chord. We had one person that went on a repeat, and it was a B flat 9 sharp 11 chord, like that. And then we had one person go, and it was a G minor 9. And so we simultaneously had this wonderful contraption of like, and then, and then we had that hit at the thing, and it was just this cacophony.
Spicy.
What's going on? So yeah, that's where the form can get difficult. But I have a feeling if you're playing
this specific sheet here is more, and I know a lot of the Persona music is kind of like more rigid in form than like most video game tunes, because like I think the Persona stuff, this one in particular, probably has like a very specific start and end to it, and this is more like if you were going to play this sheet straight through, you would use this. Not so much to jam on, probably, without figuring these things out beforehand. And
the thing that I would say that this chart is best for, honestly, would just be doing a kind of like an analysis of the tune. And so if it's like I want to write something like this. So what does it do a lot of? Well, starting at A, it just does this vamp over again, D minor 9. That's a lot of the chords of this tune are. And then let's say you get to da 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 da, and you're like, what chords are those? Well, you can just go to the sheet, na 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 da da da. And you could basically say, oh, that's how they did that. And then you go to your tune and be like, well, I liked this chord movement. I liked that, so I'll write something like that,
Right.
So
I did also
that's
see
what I would.
This is transcribed by 8-Bit Music Theory, so probably exactly what you're saying is the reason why we have this sheet in the first place.
Yeah. There's been several times whenever a sheet that he has transcribed has ended up on the site with permission. And it's just awesome. Been as it's very friendly to the thing, very much supports the cause. And so I wonder actually if you can find, let's see here, 8-bit. No, you can't do that. Okay.
Oh, they're not tagged by.
You can't search for transcribers. No. So yeah, that's that would be a thing. But yeah, it's donated quite a few. So this is something that's specific to VG lead sheets. as I'm going to kind of go in a little bit into the UI, if that's all right. Some things that are helpful. So one of the things that's most useful is that you can, there's a search bar, and this is right under the transpositions bar in the upper left. You can type something there. And basically, if you wanted to look for, do they have Kraid's theme from Metroid, you just go to the search bar, type in Kraid, and you can see the result. Yes, they do have Kraid. One of VG Lychee's policies is that they will try to go for the official name of a track as often as possible. So an example of this that's really prevalent is that if you look for Bob on Battlefield, there is no such track as Bob on Battlefield. That does not actually exist. It's actually called Main Theme. But if you search for it, you can see that it'll bring up Super Mario 64 Main Theme, also known as, and so they have a search for, if you search for something by what you think the title is, but that's not official, it'll bring both up. It's nice and convenient. And then also, it's fairly quick, and you can pretty much just search for things. Like if you want to say, what has fire? Well, here's all the tracks that have fire.
Give me fire.
I need the fire.
Give me food, give me
Okay.
fire. Give me that which I desire.
All right, so a few other things. There's a reset button, which basically will reset all search and filters to the thing. If you go to the filter, there to the right, it opens up this dialog box where you can search for composers. You can type in a composer. So if I wanted to look up everything by Nobuo Uematsu, I could then apply the filters. And what it'll do is it'll bring up every chart written by Nobuo Uematsu. And so that's so many Final Fantasy charts, so many things. And you can basically just find everything there.
I didn't know Uematsu did Tyranno Layer from Chrono Trigger. That's awesome.
I would believe it. I'm not familiar with Chrono Trigger, but I need to be. That's blasphemy. Earlier, somebody was like, "Give me that 7/8 VGM." Well, you can go to the time signature, and right under there, type in 7/8, apply the filter, and it'll bring up every tune that has 7/8 in it. Like the entire, remember earlier we looked at Clockwork from Castlevania 3, and I said that had 178 bar in it. Because it has that 178 bar, it will show up on the 7/8 filter.
That's funny.
Other things. Cool.
I didn't know they had that.
Yeah, this was added after I used to be on staff, and so back then, whenever I was there was only like 400 sheets, and it's now almost twice that, and there's so many improvements to the interface, and it's just like, it is a work of art. Like, this is phenomenal.
The other great thing, so here's a good example of looking at 7/8. If you go to the moon, one of the things that's neat there's an extra button that appears at the bottom of the screen. So actually, there's a few buttons there which are on every sheet. So there's download, there's, I think, is that print the next one, and then there's one that'll take you to like YouTube and an upload of the song so you can listen to it. But the moon is also a good one because it's in an awkward key. If you look at the very beginning there, you can see it's in, what is it in? It's in there's 6 sharps up there.
F sharp major.
Kind of hard to read. So that's like, so you can see at the bottom there's a button that says game friendly. So that's which is the original game, the original key that it's in the game. But if you click on the musician-friendly button, it's like, you know what? If you're trying to read this quickly and sight read it, that key is kind of annoying. So let's just shift it into something that's much easier to read. So it actually puts it into G and goes... so it's just basically taking the whole thing and transpose it into a key that's easier to read. So again, like for the purpose that you're using it for, sure, if you want to be like totally game accurate, right key, everything, you can use the game friendly version. If you want to just sit down and play it without having to stand out every single note because it's in an awkward key, you can pick the musician friendly one.
Right.
Which I think is a great feature.
And then This is a thing earlier. This is specific to the moon. That question was asked, wasn't that 1516? And the answer is technically yes. So if you look up here at the very top of the moon, it says quarter note equals 180. And the whole idea here is that it's in 7/8 and 4/4 if you're at quarter note equals 180, but it's in 15/16 if you're in quarter note equals 90. So it depends on what tempo you're doing it. VG lead sheets in their mission, their formatting and everything, they try to make everything as readable and as imminently playable as possible. And if you were to write this at quarter note equals 90, which is, I've seen some people did it. Actually, whenever I originally transcribed the sheet way back when, that sheet is not on this site. I actually transcribed it at quarter note equals 90, and it was 15/16 for the beginning. Actually, I did it in 4/4 because I was doing for musicians, I didn't actually do the 7/8 thing. But then all of these eighth notes were 16th notes. All of these quarter notes were eighth notes. And it just ended up just being obnoxious to read. And it was just a thing. So that's a VG lead sheets thing, is that they'll try to make it a lot more easy to read and a lot more easy to play. Even in the key of F sharp major, good old na 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 na, even.
And that's one of the neat things I think about like lead sheets as a concept is it's written to be readable. And if you look for sources for music elsewhere, like if you're looking on, if you're just grabbing MIDI files or whatever, or even if you're looking at people's arrangements and stuff on something like MuseScore or something like that, they might be written to be to be played in a certain style. They might be written just because they sound cool. But the best thing about VG lead sheets is that they've done the quality control to make sure that not only are they accurate, but they're readable. And that's one of the, like, it's funny, it even shows up with like my life singing in choir is when we get stuff from newer composers who've like written some super interesting piece of music, but they haven't thought at all about how they're formatting it. So like, the notes are accurate and everything, like the music is what they want. And maybe it sounds great when you listen to it in Sibelius, but when you as a singer go to look at it, you're like, wow, this is awful. Like this, even down to like, this page turns in a horrible place, or what's going on here. These notes are spaced out weird. It's hard to parse quickly. The great thing about the VG lead sheets team is that they've like actually tested these out, used them in practice to make sure that you can read them quickly and easily. So it's a great starting point if you're just trying to sit down and play a tune without having to deal with any, a messy looking MIDI file or what somebody else has made on MuseScore, let's say.
And then can we actually switch over to my Sibelius view?
Yep.
Just a moment. I want to demonstrate the thing. So whenever basically, you mentioned that, I'm like, well, I can do a visual thing in real time. So this measure right here and this measure are the same rhythm, but this one is easier to read and easier to parse, because essentially if you've never seen this rhythm before and this is the first time you're reading it, you can find out that, okay, these are all beamed together. So these are 4 beats in 4/4. So I know that, okay, that's a dotted eighth note. So that's going to be 3/16. And these are eighth notes. And so this comes a 16th note before. So if you're thinking of it, da, 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 da. So da, 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 da. Whereas this one, it doesn't really show you where the beats are. It shows you where 1 and 3 is. But it's kind of the same thing with this one. Like these two rhythms are the same. But this one right here is easier to read because it shows you da, da, da. It shows you where beat 3 is tied to it, whereas this one doesn't. And so I'll see stuff that's written like...
You would hate all of my charts that I've ever made because they all look like this. Because I never show them to people. I just play them back in Guitar Pro.
Well, that's fine. If it's for yourself, then... But I see stuff like this all the time, and people will send stuff to me, and I'm talking there have been professional composers that I've recorded for that will send stuff to me. And so the way that I would write this would be something like this. And it looks like it's more complicated, but the thing about it that makes it more readable is that this, I can't tell what happens in the middle of this measure. Like if I were sight reading this, it would be a thing that I would probably go dot 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 dot. Oh, that wasn't right. Okay. Dot 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 dot, and then I'd be able to play it, but I would train wreck on the first thing. Whereas this one right here, I've seen this hundreds of times written this way. So I'd just be like dot 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 dot, and it would be like, okay, there we go, done. So this looks more complicated, but it's easier to read because that's beat 1, that's beat 2, that's beat 3, that's beat 4, and you can tell that all of these are tied to each other. So essentially you're just tying and then not playing a note on the beat, not playing a note on the beat, not playing a note on the beat. And so this is much easier to read. So VG Lead Sheets is really awesome about this in the quality control, as was mentioned, because they will try to fix all these things because there have been people that have submitted stuff that looks like this, and it'll be like, we're going to write that like this because it's easier to read. So these are nitpicky things, but it's kind of like a thing that, I mentioned I'm a session musician, so I sight read for a living, basically. I would train wreck on this measure. Like, it would be a thing that I would just like, what's going on here?
Too much math that you're trying to do at once in your brain, right? Is that kind of what makes it so difficult to read something like that?
Well, that, and because of the way that I'm trained seeing things, basically what my brain sees is that. And so my brain will read it as if it's on the beat instead of syncopated, and it'll be a dot 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 dot, and then the train wreck will happen whenever I see this extra beam there. No. It's like wait, some hold up.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Saying that like that first one looks like it's on the beat rather than syncopated, whereas the second one is obviously a syncopated offbeat kind of thing. That's a really good like clue into why it needs to be written good. But I mean, the people, I would say the people who are watching this aren't probably writing any sheets, but
they probably are.
This is better.
But it's yeah, it's good to know why sometimes something looks more complicated than you think it might need to be, or especially if you have been playing around in music or whatever, and it's not taking that readability into account. But the idea is that, yeah, even if you're looking at that second measure that John has there, if you're like really having to break that down and like clap it out, you can see much more detail of what's going on in that second one than you can in the first one. So it's actually easier. Yeah, you can think, yeah, this is 4 groups of 4.
Very true.
And when you break it down, it just becomes much easier because and the rule with so many of these things, maybe we should have talked about it way back when, is if you need to slow it down, like clap it out, tap out the rhythm, go through it one note at a time or whatever, to help you to read through each measure. And obviously it helps if you're familiar with the tune already, then it comes a lot quicker than if you're doing something completely from scratch.
And this is a short little thing that I'm kind of going to add. I'm not going to go too long with it, but if you want the cheat code to be fluent with reading sheet music, basically whenever you get really, really fluent, you aren't reading notes and rhythms, you're reading pictures. And this is the principle that kind of guides it. So for example, this first beat right here, every single time you see this beat and it's written like that, da, da, da. And so if I had 4 of these, I just picked random notes. So I'm just focusing on, if you had this, da, 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 it's always going to be that rhythm. It's always going to be put like that. So the way that my composition professor put it is that if you just stare at this rhythmic figure, and you just go, well, we have a counting system we use, which would be 1 ta to 1 ta to 1 ta to 1 ta da 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 da, and you just stare at it, and you do it about 100 times, you'll never miss it. Same thing with this. This is 4/16 notes. You do that about 100 times, you'll never miss it. Da da da, you'll never miss it. And then da 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 da, or da da, as it were. So that's kind of just the secret to reading sheet music, is just staring at it over and over and over and over again, and training your brain to where you don't have to think about it. Okay, I don't have to find that as a D. I've looked at it enough times. I've trained my brain. That's a D. That's a D. That's a D.
I find it's kind of similar to, I'm not much of a sight reader myself, but what you're describing is similar to like when we read words, like we're not reading every individual letter and sounding them out in our head. Once we've learned how to read a language, I can look at this message and see Shuja 2 says I can sight read piano roll, and I can pick that up really quick, just that context there. And it's the same thing with sheet music. Like you have to learn how to read the individual musical words and phrases and things.
Yeah, and like anything, the more you do it, the better it is, and that's why again something like VG lead sheets is cool, because you filter it by simple, and you find the simplest possible ones, and you find a tune that and you work through like reading it, trying to play it, understanding what's going on, and then the more you do it, the more you repeat that, the quicker it gets to recognize those patterns, and see instantly know that something is a G or a D or an E flat or whatever, without having to count your way up and down the lines. But obviously it starts there early on, just as when you're a kid reading, you're looking at the shapes of the letters and remembering, sounding them out, remembering which one it is.
Yeah. And the way that this manifests is it's the same thing with pitches. Like looking at this here, this looks like just a bunch of notes, but I can see, okay, it starts at C. Because of the key signature here, all B's are going to be flat. So it's only going to be a B flat. It starts on C, it goes up a scale up to G, and then it just goes down and then back up. So if I'm reading this, like if I were to read this on my primary instrument here, then basically I don't even have to think about what notes these are. I can basically just go and God, I need to warm up. All right. Something like that. I'm not actually thinking about, okay, it's a C, a D, an E. I'm just thinking, okay, that's a scale. I know what the rhythm is. I'm just going to let this go on autopilot and do the scale thing. So, and I made it, of course, I make an idiot of myself on the first reading because I'm like, I'm going to go fast. I'm not warmed up. I haven't played since yesterday.
So if you were looking at this and then like all of a sudden, I mean, this is kind of unrelated, but if you're looking at this whole thing and it's a scale because the key signature, there's no kind of accidental markings or anything on all these notes. When you see an accidental, is that something that like triggers in your brain where you're like, oops, not in the scale, put this note on there, put this extra spin on it?
Well, not really, because then almost always, anytime there's an accidental added, I can usually tell that the scale changed. So like, well, now this group is now C scale, because the B is natural. So I just have to change which scale I'm accessing in muscle memory.
True.
And it works the same on guitar. If you know your scales, then really you can just let the shapes guide you.
This is why scales are important, everybody. So
you
can read like JohnStacy.
Right. So you can, I'm an awful piano player. Something like that, right? I am an awful pianist, but I could still do the thing because it's like, okay, I know that my scale is da 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 da, that kind of thing, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I think the other thing I was going to say about like the pattern recognition thing, like especially if you think of if you play piano or guitar or really any instrument that can play more than one note at a time, where you're having to read not just a line of single notes but chords and so on. You start to learn to recognize again shapes or shortcuts or whatever. So maybe you see that you see that the bass line for something is just doing a straightforward like bouncing on an octave, and with a quick glance you see like, okay, it does that for like 8 measures, so I can basically stop paying attention to bass clef right now, and I'll just focus on reading the treble clef, because you just sort of recognize those patterns. And obviously when you're learning something and playing through it for the first time, you'll realize then when you hit the point where it changes and like, okay, no, that's not right. Now I do have to pay attention to that. But that's like, if you think about that, somebody like sight reading a two-handed piano piece completely from scratch, you don't have time to be reading every single note. It's all about that pattern recognition of seeing like, oh, those three symbols with that spacing, generally that's a major chord, so I'm going to play a major chord there, and then realizing where you're wrong or where something deviates and you need to fix it.
And that's where writing, whenever you're writing isn't accurate, that's where it can kind of become a problem, because like this right here, I know what this is by looking at it. Like, I don't even have to sound it out. I know exactly what this is. I can just, I know what the lick looks like. But if somebody were to do something like that, it would be a thing that I'd be like, da 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 da. And so it's a thing that, if you have something that looks, especially in a bunch of notes, like something like, and then repeat this a bunch of times.
Ooh,
and for one of them, right there, and let's say this is going at 180 beats a minute, I'm probably going to skip over that one, honestly, because I've just parsed and said, okay, that's okay. I'm just going to do it because I'm not actually thinking about the notes anymore. So I'd probably miss this the first time, So, and I love how it's like, I'm going to do an example on piano, except for the fact that I'm a horrible pianist.
Yeah, we got Chris right here.
Going back to the lead sheets, I was just thinking it'd be cool to look at a few kind of interesting ones that are like different for a certain reason. Like we were looking at DK rap the other day, which is a pretty funny one to look at, because like, musically there's not a whole lot to it, and you can really see that from the lead sheet.
Where is it? Donkey Kong 64
DK rap.
Yeah.
Use the search feature.
Oh yeah, I thought I could get to it quick and easy, but yeah, this one is a lot. This is a very different looking lead sheet than what we've seen all today. But
yeah,
it shows you some pretty good stuff about like how to read. And of course, everybody hopefully knows the DK rap, but you can see the exact notations for like DK, Donkey Kong, DK.
Go to vocals.
Is here.
And you can see there as well. Yeah, you on the vocal version?
Yeah, I'm on the vocal sheet.
Yeah. So you can see there as well, like with those for the where it's written the notes for the DK and the Donkey Kong, like those don't actually have pitches because it's just said. So you can see they've got the little X's instead of the colored in circles, and that's something you'd see on like percussion notation as well, where there's no like if you got a cowbell part, it'll be one line and it'll have the rhythms, but there's no there's no pitches associated with it. It's just a single pitch. But it's kind of neat there. Like you've got a couple of other features there that John maybe talk about, just like the repeating and the slashes for the actual like the verse part.
Yeah, and like so it says play 4 times. Literally all that is just to fit in the thing because it'd be awkward. This is an example of a lead sheet that I wouldn't really use seriously, like because it would be a thing that there's a lot of stuff in the original that's not notated on a lead sheet, a lot of the little licks in the background. I would use this purely if you're going to do the vocal thing, or if you wanted to do something like, so we're finally here, and then just do something like that, the bossa nova version on just that E major, just that E chord, just don, 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 and then you have somebody just do a spoken lounge version, But
yeah, the
otherwise
Richard Cheese version of it.
I haven't heard that name in a long, long, long time. But so the way that honestly I would read something like this, because the point of it is really just so you can have the words, is that, okay, it's a 2-bar vamp. You're just going to play this E7 chord or whatever rhythm. You're just going to do that. So we're finally here performing for you. And then DK, Donkey Kong. And that's really all it is. You know?
It's a pretty easy one. Pretty simple. Very simple. No other changes. Another vocals one. Why is it not filtering your vocals? Okay. It was showing me like Doom E1M1 has vocals. And I was like, that's not right. Sonic Adventure 2.
Oh, you have to reset your filter.
Yeah. Sonic Adventure 2. Here's a good one of like a vocal sheet that actually has like pitches. And if you're having trouble like matching pitches for a VGM track without vocals, like an instrumental thing, matching pitches for vocals you might find is easier because I think humans just tend to connect with vocals on a different level than we do instruments. So if one doesn't work for you, maybe try doing the vocals and singing along with it while you're clapping, you know.
Right.
Yeah, was there any other major things we want to talk about? People have any questions about specific things? We're at a little over an hour here. I don't know if you all got to hit the road. I see Evil Sonic got to hit the road. Thanks for hanging out, Maine.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think we pretty much got it. Because I think the most part, you know, all I really wanted to communicate was just the ideas that one, these aren't arrangements, and B, these aren't set in stone. It's a reference, you know. That's the main thing I wanted to communicate. It's a reference, and you have tons and tons and tons of freedom for that.
Yeah, and the other thing that it's kind of cool to do is grab one of these lead sheets and then go listen to a band like Super Soul Bros or bands that like to jam and do solos and stuff like that, and follow along, because you'll see what they're doing is, you know, like the typical structure is they'll do, you know, a once through, you know, the melody the regular way, and then they'll repeat over and over again, sitting on the same chord pattern and structure. Like, you know, okay, we're gonna do straight through letter A and letter B, and then we're going to keep doing A and B over again while different people take solos, and everybody else will kind of get out of the way of the soloist, but stick on the same chords. And then at some point they decide to finish, and they'll maybe do the, you know, reprise the main melody over again, and then do some kind of ending that they've agreed on. But it's kind of neat to see like that's how it works in like the jam context as well, where you start playing this tune, you don't know where it's going to end, you just have an agreement that, yeah, we're going to do it once through, and then we're going to go back and loop on it over and over again while people take turns soloing or, you know, playing around with it. Like that's kind of one of the neat uses of lead sheets as well, is that because it's just that bare bones, you can do all sorts of stuff over the top of it. Yeah, you just, you know, keep the bass line, keep the chords going, but, you know, you ditch the melody and you play a solo instead, right?
Exactly.
And then for arranging, if you want an example of an arrangement that, you know, is directly applicable, if you go and you find my arrangement of the moon, it's called Stop the Milky Way. It's an arrangement of the moon, and I actually use this lead sheet whenever doing it. And you can kind of basically see, okay, where did he keep it the same? Where did I change? And so, like the melody at A in the moon, da 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 da, for the first slow bit, that is note for note the melody. The only way it changes is at B. I go da 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 da. So I changed it a little bit, but other than that, it's note for note, and I just changed the chords and then orchestrated it. But it was an arrangement of this lead sheet, and it was almost 6 minutes of an arrangement done from one page lead sheet. So.
Nice.
So if you want to do it, it's also in the original key. I kept it in the key of G flat instead of F sharp, because for whatever reason, you give a wind player a piece of, all right, so this is a real phenomenon. You give a wind player something in F sharp, they will freak out. You give them something written in the key of G flat, where everything is spelled in flats, and suddenly it's like, oh, this is fine. Because, yeah, it's
Even though it's the same key.
It's the same key, but it's written different and everything's spelled different, so it looks different.
Okay.
Yeah. There's like some psychological aspect to it. I know like ragtime players, I think, prefer everything in flats as well rather than sharp keys if you can possibly do it, just because of the way that the brain works. the other thing I was going to suggest, and it's a if you do get this opportunity when this starts to be a thing again, if you're at one of the big events or conventions or something, like at a MagFest or a VGM Con or anything like that, and the folks from VG Lead Sheet are there facilitating jams where they're using this website, they're using tablets and everything else, it's really fun to just like sit in, even if you don't play at all, like sit in, maybe pull the lead sheet up on your phone, try and follow what's going on. And if you do feel like hopping in and all you can do is play that, that bass line with nothing else attached to it, that's the joy of like jamming, is everybody contributes what they can, and hopefully it's just fun and entertaining.
Yep.
I remember I joined in a jam of Guile's theme, from Street Fighter 2. And I am not a guitar player. I don't claim to be one, but I know basically every chord because I've written for it so many times that I can like, okay, I know that C sharp minor is this. Okay, I found it. Okay, I know a B is this. And so I can do that. But they just had a jam and I sat it on guitar and I was able to just like really horribly, really slowly, and just one chord at a time, and they were just like, yeah,
nice. Yeah, this is great, fantastic. Those jams are a lot of fun, I gotta say. I really enjoy doing them whenever I can at some of the events. MagFest. Did they do any at VGM Con when we were there, Chris?
Yeah, I sat in. I played on. They did a whole a session where they went through the entire everything from Mario Kart 64.
Nice. I don't think I got to do any of the stuff at VGM Con.
Really fun.
Damn. Next time, whenever it happens.
Next time.
Yeah.
I just realized the flats and sharps thing. It just occurred to me why it is that way.
Why?
On wind instruments, the way you change the pitch is by adding length and lowering. So that's the way you change the pitch. So flats on strings. Yep.
How many instruments does John?
Yes.
The way that you change things on strings is that you put stuff down and go up.
Okay.
So sharps. And it's like, holy crap, I never thought about that. I just realized why that is.
And I guess it's the same with like flutes and things too, right? You're making it longer.
Right. On the flute, you basically have a thing. You start here, and how
JohnStacy is the new hat, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, so basically, you start at a thing. And for the most part, whenever you put fingers down, the pitch goes down for the most part, except for this.
Wow.
That makes sense, like, for me playing on piano, like there's certain notes that are just like weird, even if they're correct. So if you're in a key that's got tons of flats, and you end up having to have a C flat, which is actually a B, so it's another white note on the keyboard. That's something feels off about reading that, as opposed to if you can find a key that spells it as a B instead, rather than as a C flat. So I know that certainly when I'm doing stuff for the band, I'll like experiment. If I don't like I'll notate something out, and then we'll jam on it, and then for whatever reason I just don't like reading it, I'll flip it to the other key, or I'll take the key out of it completely, because sometimes that's actually quicker to read.
Nice.
Right.
Cool. So yeah, is there anything else we wanted to hit? I think we're all good. Thanks again, John and Angry Polar Bear, for hanging out and doing this with me. This has been great. Where can people find you guys online? Let's start with JohnStacy.
So you can find me online one of two ways. Look for JohnStacy, JohnStacy, is all one word. Search for that. If you don't find that, search for February 33 Jazz. That's the other one. And I think Twitter and Twitch. I'm February 33 Jazz. Everywhere else, I'm either JohnStacy or the JohnStacy or something like that, but I'm very easy to find.
Yeah, and for you, Chris?
Oh, for me, well, for the most part, look me up through my band, The Runaway Four. We're The Runaway Four on just about everything on social media and Bandcamp and Facebook and all the rest of it. But I am pretty frequently in the Dwelling of Duels Discord server. So if you do have questions about sheet music or how to read stuff or interpret stuff, absolutely hit me up on there, and I'll do my best to help out. Maybe even throw out a quick 10-minute transcription of something into MIDI like I did the other day for Chuja.
Nice.
Just because it was fun. But yeah, and I know everybody on the Discord is so helpful and handy, whether it's production questions or music questions or any other, most other types of questions.
Yeah, definitely. If you're not part of the DoD Discord, you can find it by going to the dwellingofduels.net homepage. There's a little button up in the top that has the Discord icon. You can join from there. The three of us are always in there. We're always posting and things like that with, hundreds of other people. I actually don't know how many people are in there currently, but, at least dozens of active posters who can answer any questions. And yeah, hopefully all the lead sheet stuff has been helpful for you guys. It is currently vgleadsheets.com month at dwellingofduels.net, meaning we have crossed over and we're doing a special promo event with them for this month. So that you can submit any song that has a sheet here on vgleadsheets.com. Whether you use the sheet specifically to make your arrangement or not, doesn't really matter as long as the sheet exists. It works as a submission. So I think the deadline for that to send in a track is, I can't open my calendar. Does anyone know the deadline for track submission? Let me go to the site. The deadline
It's usually 3 days from the end of the month.
Yeah, but I couldn't open the calendar, so I didn't know how many days were in the month. June 28th is the deadline this month. And yeah, I hope that those of you in the chat have had a good time here. We're also, Dwelling of Duels is also on Patreon, patreon.com/dwellingofduels. Patrons do get access to a special role and channel in our Discord server. Both JohnStacy and Angry Polar Bear are contributing patrons, so hats off to them. And yeah, you help support our website and our banner art and things like that. So we appreciate any kind of contributions there. Yeah, and well, of course, we're on social media, Dwelling of Duels, everywhere, Facebook, Twitter, things like that. And I think that's it. We're going to be doing another stream on Thursday. I don't have my calendar in front of me, so I don't know what it is, but tune in Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be doing something. It's either an interview or something else. I don't actually know yet. So we're doing a special interview that's coming up soon. I think that's on Saturday, though. But yeah, hope you guys tune in.
Good stuff.
Yeah. And with that said, yeah, of course, guys, thanks for coming out. And
Thank you.
Play some outro music here. Back to Dwelling of Doom. Thanks a lot, everybody. This has been Dwelling of Duels. Keep it here. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.